Look at the problems now. The problem is, all of us, we want government should spend more, kharcha karo, spend more on education, spend more on health, spend more on roads, everything. At the same time, we'll say, tax less, itna zyada tax le rahe ho. And then you will say, don't borrow, debt bahut बढ़ गया. The primary responsibility of the government is law and order. If you do not have law and order, and if you do not have the security of property, then it's impossible to have industry.
Namaste, Ashok sir. Namaste, everybody. We are going to discuss your book, sir, In Search of Glory, India's Search of Glory, Political Calculus and Economy. But before I ask you about the book itself, I want to ask you about your own journey. The audience should know that sir is an economist. He's been a psephologist. He's worked in corporate. He's worked with the government. Now he's part of the opposition party in Bengal as an MLA from BJP. Sir, it's very easy for a lot of us to sit here or anywhere and comment on politics कि ये ऐसे क्यों नहीं कर रहे, ये वैसे क्यों नहीं कर रहे, है ना, politicians के लिए. आपने हर एंगल से गवर्नमेंट को देखा है और आज आप on ground, literally on ground in a very semi-urban constituency. You represent that constituency. How has this journey been? And what are your 3 learnings, especially that where you would say कि मैंने ये सोचा था, ये हमको लगता था, but now the ground understanding is completely different. If you had to say, tell us about 3-4 of such learnings and experiences.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. Salam alaikum. This is not an occasion, मेरे आत्मकथा मैं नहीं कहूँगा क्योंकि I'm not distinguished enough to waste your time on my आत्मकथा. But I need to tell you this, that it has been a remarkable journey in the sense we always talk about how bad the politicians are, chor hai, badmash hai, criminal hai, and so on. But the difficulties of governing India and keeping it together, knowing a little bit about India, I thought that I've been very fortunate. Coming from a middle class family, fate has been, or God or Allah has been very kind. I've had good postings. So I wanted to go back to the roots. And roots, see, my first lesson that I learned by going back to my roots. I'm from West Bengal, but I left West Bengal in 1971. I was never very enamored by leftist politics, particularly after ultra-left. And when I was doing my bachelor's, West Bengal was in turmoil, Naxalite movement. I was also involved in some student politics in a very minor way. And my parents thought that my life is in danger, so I came to Delhi. And Delhi, as they say in India, there used to be something, Matwali Delhi. So Delhi enamored me, and I remained in Delhi, went abroad. Then I wanted to go back to my roots because I felt like I've seceded. I've seceded from my roots. And I got an opportunity for whatever reason, I don't know. I was given a ticket, I went back. What did I learn? First, I learned the difference between India and Bharat. Now, I come from a background and my work life has taken me to very advanced places where I've seen a lot of prosperity and good life, as it is called. But Bharat is different. And particularly in the constituency that I am in, which Ratcliffe Sahab the, he drew the line. And the line has got no logic. No, it goes left, right, everywhere. And my constituency, which is Dakshin Dinajpur, South Dinajpur. It's like a protrusion into Bangladesh. See, the rail line used to go from Kolkata to Darjeeling via Hilli. The rail line fell on the other side. So the entire communication and transportation system got disrupted. People came this side. There are some people who went that side also. So I was lucky to see what problems Bengal has gone through. Punjab has gone through the same thing, but there is a difference between Punjab and Bengal because Punjab, there was a de facto population exchange. I can claim that we Bengalis were much more sensible. We didn't kill so many of each other. And we still have many minorities in West Bengal. And Bangladesh has also got some minorities, but there are problems. So that's my first take, my first learning, that there are two, it's a divided society where there is India and there is Bharat. Second is how difficult it is to be a politician. As I told you, when I was given a ticket, I told them that I can't claim that I am poor, but this is all hard-earned money. I'm not going to spend any of my own money. They said, don't worry. I said, I don't know anyone. They said, don't worry. But then you have to campaign. You don't win an election without campaigning. I'll just tell you one small story from my experience. That was COVID time. So my wife was saying, mask jarur pehenna. I'm going around with my mask on. There's a young tribal woman, very feisty. She said, Mukoshta chorao, remove your mask. I want to see your face. So I told her, I'm got old. Kya mukh dekhogi? Dikhao. So now, when it comes to your voters, they're the bosses. We are used to talking to them with the air of superiority. But when you're going as a candidate, you're a supplicant and you have to get their votes. So the equation changes. The interpersonal equation that politicians have with their voters is very different from the equation that we middle class, upper class guys have with friends and relations. The third is that politicians are just a cross-section of the society. You can't expect our politicians to be like politicians of Belgium. Belgian politicians are part of Belgian society. Our politicians are part of our society. So that's why the name of the book is Political Calculus and the Economy.
Thank you so much, sir. You make a very interesting point about India versus Bharat, right? And if we, in the book as well, you write about 3 phases of India. One is the Nehruvian phase, then you have the post-Nehruvian phase, and then you have the post-liberalization phase. And throughout, I think the India versus Bharat distinction was always very pronounced. It has always been that pronounced. But along with that, I think since the start of independence, there has been a suspicion of resource generators and wealth creators, right? That has reflected into our policies as well. That has reflected into the tax structure and the taxation. If you see, at the time of Indira Gandhi, we've had 97% taxation. Now, going back, because I work on ancient Indian history, and because you talk about surge of India's glory, right? Assumption being we had some glorious past before. In that glorious past, there was no suspicion of wealth creators. They were celebrated. Money, wealth was important. But from there, we've come to a phase where even now, today, in the post-liberalization phase, we name call our wealth generators. So how do you see this? How do you see this now and how do you see this going forward?
So I may be saying something controversial. Not this part. First, in search of glory, see, I'm not a historian. So at least for recorded history, we haven't had it so good for a long time. India that we see today is far better than the India that we had for at least a few centuries. Also, we haven't had an India which is so large for a long, long time. Even the Mughals didn't have an India which is so large. The British didn't have an India so large because they had princely states. So for a long time, at least as far as I know, India was not so large. So our founding fathers, our freedom movement fighters, our people like Sardar Patel, P.P. Menon, I'll even mention Jawaharlal Nehru, they united India. Some 550 odd states, princely states, have got incorporated in India. Goa has been liberated, Chandranagar has been liberated, Puducherry has been liberated. Now, when it comes to money problem, again, there are so many very wise people here. But I feel that India, for a long time at least, has had a disdain for money. See, this Chaturvarna that we have, Brahmins, that's the top of the food chain. Then the Kshatriyas, then the Vaishyas, and then the Shudras. I was reading a write-up by, I think, if I'm not getting the pronunciation wrong, Manucci, an Italian traveler. See, the Vaishyas or the Manyas, for a long time, were hiding their money. You couldn't make out that this guy has got so much money. Their money would be seen only when there's a wedding. Even now that is true. Your neighbor may be a rich man. You wouldn't know how rich he is until you attend his, what is called the great Pat Indian wedding or a funeral. I think we're getting out of it, getting out of this psychology that money is a bad thing. Because if you cannot respect the wealth creators, then wealth will not be created. If I'm a wealth creator and I'm always on the defensive, I should be on the defensive if I'm corrupt. But if you have got the laws of the land, and if I'm observing all the laws and making money, so be it. So you're absolutely on the dot when you say that we have to be slightly more respectful about the wealth creators. And I've seen it from my childhood days. Today, we consider some of the industrial houses to be very good. But in our childhood days, we used to hear in Kolkata, Birla Tata chor hai. I mean, every industrialist have to go through the phase where they have to face this kind of criticism. Now, it's another thing that even in the United States, if you look at Ford, if you look at Kennedy's, they say that every million has got something fishy at the root of it. So if it is true, a worldwide phenomenon, you can't expect a wealth creator who is in a hurry not to be, I shouldn't say evading the laws, but avoiding the laws. And that is a very slippery path when you're evading, not evading, but avoiding. So I agree with you, but I have nothing more to say on this, that we need slightly more sympathy with the wealth creators.
So the reason I asked this question, but before that, if we go back to the Indian scriptures on wealth, right? I don't think what we have right now, disdain, is because of the Chaturvarna. That is actually not at all true. Because everything eventually boils down to the state policy. And if you look at the guidance for the state policy across Dharma Shastras or across Niti Shastras, they all talk about respecting your wealth creators. They all talk about how important wealth creators are. However, when India adopted the socialist approach after independence, right? I think that's where the disdain for wealth creators came, not from the society, but from the politics. And I think there was a difference in the way even society, what society aspired for, and the narrative that the political class started setting, right? Even today, if you see, I think there has been a change in terms of probably what the government thinks versus the narrative which the opposition is trying to talk about. However, as far as this disdain stays, how are we going to achieve the glory at all. And I ask you more as somebody who is now in the government, not in the government, in opposition in a state like West Bengal, where even today, I mean, it was one of the, it was a prosperous state. It had lot of industries, yeah, to begin with. And today we know where it is. So how do you bridge this gap? How do you educate the voters themselves to understand the game at play between politics and the real glory that we are going after? Like, how do you ensure that politics impacts policy making the way it should?
You're right. Marxist politics, leftist politics had a lot to do with creating some kind of suspicion about wealth creators who are called capitalists, the exploiters of the proletariat. Now, that problem now is more or less disappeared because we know that socialism is excellent. Communism is even better. The only problem is it's unworkable. We have seen it didn't work in the Soviet Union. It didn't work in Mao's China. It didn't work in the whole of Eastern Europe. So we need a practical solution for a practical problem. Now here, see, when it comes to West Bengal, you must be slightly more sympathetic because West Bengal, what do you find? Mind you, this book that I've written, it's almost like my notes, my understanding of India. So those are very troubled times, the post-independence few years. The country has been divided. We have refugees coming. We have the British managing agents leaving the country. There's a lot of uncertainty as to what will happen. And West Bengal is flooded with refugees. Mind you, not the first chief minister, but the second chief minister. But that was only after a few months after independence. Dr. B.C. Roy, who I respect very much, he was a very outstanding doctor, world-renowned. He became the chief minister. But with so much refugee problem and the food problem, that was also the time when you have to rehabilitate the refugees, then that's really a very fertile ground for trade union movements. So trade union movement, Gheraos came in the 60s. So it was very troubled time. And I must say, I'm not being partisan, but at that time, the kind of slogan that capitalists are all thieves and dacoits doesn't help creating a proper structure. But apart from that, there are some few structural reasons. I've already told you that post-partition, the transportation system in Bengal got completely disrupted because of this border and rail lines going sometime through India, sometime through Bangladesh. The natural economic space. West Bengal used to depend on East Bengal for food, for raw materials. It was also the market. And the market got disrupted. Natural economic space you break up. And then there was the problem with Calcutta port silting. Now in the world, if you look around, there are no riverine ports. Riverine ports don't work because the large ships cannot come to this low draft, whatever was good enough for at the time of Robert Clive or Job Charnock coming in a ship from England. It's not good enough now. But West Bengal is the only coastal state which doesn't have a deep sea port. And the land issue has also become very difficult. So it requires a very steady hand to bring West Bengal back to its glory. In terms of per capita income, it has fallen back. It is the Ramneek was talking about Punjab declining. Punjab is another story where it has declined over time. But I think West Bengal is a faster decline and politics has a lot to do with it. But that's the dialectic between politics and economics. You have bad economics, you'll get even more bad politics. You'll have bad politics, you'll have even more bad economics.
On that one, sir, you also have been an observer of behavior of the voters in terms of how do they elect the politicians and the politics that they do, right? And we have seen, and you also speak about that in the book, that it is not necessary that a good economics will get you the votes that you have to. Even today in India, we've seen states which have done very well economically and because of the right policies. And you have states like West Bengal, Kerala, we just spoke about Punjab as well. The voters there are seeing this change. They are seeing that some states are growing better than what they are. Why is that shift not happening in those states? As if you have to just say from your observations of the voting behavior.
See, first, you must note that though we're a middle-income country now, we have plenty of poor people. And in India, if you ask anyone, no one will say I'm rich. Everyone say I'm middle class, lower middle class, because perhaps it's in our psychology that we don't want to say I'm rich. I've done very well. करोड़ों कमाया, कोई नहीं बोलेगा, बोलेगा ठीक. So now, when it comes to the poor person, in economics it's called intertemporal time preference. So you are a very successful writer, so you must be having some money. So if I tell you, Hami, don't spend this 100 rupees now, save it, you'll immediately ask, kya milega? If I tell you the rate of interest is 12%, is a theek hai. If I tell you rate of interest is 6%, is a nahi. But for a poor person, today is much more important than tomorrow. So, what has now been christened as reverie politics, that makes an appearance when you have poor people who care more about today than about tomorrow. And all these policies which you say will deliver good outcomes. If I tell a poor lady, that सुनो, थोड़ा कम खाओ, तुम्हारा बेटी को मैं डॉक्टर बना दूंगा. बोलेगा बेटी को तो डॉक्टर बनाओगी, वो तो 15 साल बाद, अभी तो जीने दो. So reverie politics is one reason is that. Second is the lack of trust. And I tell you, so far I think, maybe I'm deceiving myself, politician means everyone thinks I'm thief. चोरी तो जरूर करता. Now, चोरी अगर जरूर करता है, then all these tall promises, अरे दो भाई मुझे एक दफा देखो, 5 साल में क्या होता है, they will say नहीं, oh चलो, I prefer 1,000 rupees to, that's one. Second problem is, we have a problem of targeting. If you say everyone is poor, then you can't have an anti-poverty program. Now, this is not in the book, but I'll tell you my experience. I'm a powerful man. I can give income certificates. तो मैं बोला मुझे क्या पता रमनीक का क्या income है. If he comes to me with a income certificate, I'd say किसी से तो ला, वो BDO से लाता है, पंचायत से लाता है. And I'm surprised everyone writes my monthly income is 4,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, 6,000 rupees. I asked them, 6,000 rupiya mein I see your wife, she is quite pretty and she's health is good. 2 lovely children, they're wearing good clothes. ये 6,000 रुपया में कैसे गुजारा करते हो? They smile. But when the BDO has signed, the Sarpanch has signed, मैं भी छप्पा लगाता हूँ. So targeting has become a major problem. That's why you'll find that when we give free food, we give it to 80 crore people. When a state introduces money for women, I don't see any reason why you should be getting a monthly stipend from the government.
Oh, I don't.
You don't, because you are good. You're a good lady. But remember the LPG subsidy scheme? When the Prime Minister appealed for voluntary giving up, I'm proudly can say that I did.
We did too.
But only 1 crore people gave up. But do you really think only 1 crore people should have given up or more? So targeting continues to be a major problem. The other is that second point that I want to make is that there is a sectarian division. So when you want something and I want something else, then the politician is in a quandary, because which group do I cater to? So this division of demands, if everyone wanted that no, or kuch nahi karna hai, improve the quality of education, improve the quality of health, that would have been an easier problem to solve. But you want good health, you want good schooling, you want roads, you also want more money in the Archaeological Survey of India. If everything becomes important, nothing is important. So these are some of the reasons. And the other, of course, is the pure ignorance. See, to expect an average voter, I don't know, have you gone through the manifestos of political parties before election? You're from Maharashtra. Did you go through that? Give me an honest answer.
No, not in detail, but upar say yes.
So, even an enlightened lady like you didn't go through the manifesto. So, voting is done in a way, I feel that voting has become like a love affair. When you fall in love with a person, you don't really try to find out BA में कितना मार्क्स मिला था, क्या हुआ था, income कितना है. So politicians also have this thing. And charisma is something which you cannot quantify, but some people have it, some people don't. So ignorance is, and also it's, you can rationally argue, क्या होगा मेरा एक vote में? Qureshi Saab was saying that there was one seat, C.P. Joshi's seat, which he lost by one vote. But it's quite rational for me to think, मेरा एक vote में क्या जीतेगा, हारेगा. तो चलो, let me have a good meal, फिर सोते हैं, vote दे के क्या होगा. Actually, that's a very, unless you're very enlightened and you think it's your duty, the immediate return from your vote, oh, जाना पड़ेगा पैदल जाके, it's actually a great tribute to our voters. The turnout turns out to be more than the United States and many other countries.
All that you listed out, sir, let me add to that also we still have a lot of fissures in the society, be it religion, be it caste, all of that. And we've seen that impact as recently as 2024 elections as well, right? With all this, how will we ever achieve the glory that we speak of? One, and second, how do you define that glory?
I'm very happy that you asked this question, particularly I'm sitting in Srinagar. The question is of religious conflict, democracy, and development. See, some people get very worried that religious conflicts are taking place. There is reason to worry. See, first thing you must note is that India is a fantastic experiment. They define the ethno-linguistic fractionalization. So you're a Gujarati who lives in Maharashtra. You are a Shakahari. You are a Hindu, maybe I'm a Jain or a Muslim. So you look at language, you look at ethnicity. There is Ramneek wearing a turban. We don't even speak the same language. He eats rotis, I eat chawal. So in terms of ethno-linguistic diversity, India is one of the most diverse countries in the world. Now it's called fractionalization. It's fractured. But that's not much of a problem. That's not much of a problem because fractionalization is there in Belgium, in Switzerland, even the United States. It's fractionalized. You have Black Americans, you have white Americans, you have Irish Americans, you have Italian Americans of all types. The Hispanics, now of Asian origin. But the problem is not in fractionalization. In the last session, there was talk about polarization. Now, you must distinguish between fractionalization and polarization. Fractionalization, I accept, you're different. But so be it. We're fine. Polarization is the hostility that we have to each other. Now, polarization, when you have different groups, you have some tension. See, we are, after all, human beings are animals. So we are not very comfortable with someone who's not exactly like me. There is some tension always. But does it mean that I feel immediately, chalo lathi leke maro? I don't. Now, this polarization is the hostility that you have, animosity that you have. Now, what happens? So, you have fractionalized societies which are not polarized. Now, there are a few important issues that come up there. See, this question comes up with secularism and religion. Now, to be secular doesn't mean you have to be religious. I can be very religious and still secular. So what is known is that with development, what happens? Religiosity doesn't go down. It may or it may not. You look at the Europeans, you look at the Americans. Americans still write in God we trust. But they don't go to church every Sunday. Many Hindus now don't go to temple every Saturday or Tuesday. There are many Muslims who don't go to the mosque every Friday because time has become important. Previously, your great-grandfather who used to own land, and his time value was very little. So he could go on a Tuesday and do kirtan from morning till evening. If I tell you to go to the temple every Tuesday and spend 8 hours, he'll say, kitab likhna hai, nahi to paisa kahan se aayega. So as value of time increases, religiosity goes down. And there is a second issue. The second issue is the group size. A small group doesn't fight with another small group. A very small group doesn't fight with a very big group. What happens is when they're medium size and equal, then they start fighting. Now, one thing that is a good thing that is happening in Hindu society is the obliteration of caste. So caste consolidation is taking place. I don't even know which caste you belong to. But by birth, I'm a Brahmin. I don't know whether I should be sitting here according to the Shastras. But I don't care. Now, when this caste consolidation takes place, it is taking place. Where can you see this? You can see this in the surveys. There was a committee that was set up to find out the proportion of different castes, OBCs, and so on. It's now what you find that the caste composition is becoming it's consolidating. But consolidation is not complete. I believe this caste consolidation that is going on in Hindu society, which is a good thing. See, Baba Ambedkar wrote that caste is what has destroyed India, especially the Hindus. So when caste consolidation takes place, when it becomes almost complete, I expect and predict that you will find religious conflicts going down. So there is hope.
That's very interesting. So you're saying caste consolidation as overall Hindu consolidation or individual caste consolidations?
It's also happening among the Muslims. Among the Muslims, which is a good thing. I mean, what is this fractured, within religion, you have castes?
So my question as a follow-up to this and to the previous point which you mentioned, right? With all this fractionalization, we all want different things, right? As you mentioned. So politics in India, especially given the kind of democracy we have, is always going to be tricky. It is always going to appeal to the fraction which votes as a united fraction, right? Politicians would want to play the arithmetic to get that kind of votes. How do we ensure that the policies don't become that group focused and rise above that to take us to the glory that we are discussing here?
Now here, Ami, there is hope. Because if you see, I don't have the books, I can't give you the numbers. The rise of the regional parties. The regional parties were all caste-based. Remember Lalu Yadav's RJD? It was a Yadav party. Then you have the Kurmi party. Then you have the BSP, which is the Bahujan party. Now, the beauty of India is that it's very difficult to win an election on a sectarian basis. Because suppose you have a large enough group, 15% of the population. Even if you get 80% of that 50%, that's only 12%. So if you appeal to a sectarian interest, you may lose votes of the other groups. And we have seen, it's in the electoral outcomes. You have seen that caste-based parties are losing their salience, which is what gives me confidence in my prediction that caste consolidation is taking place and we are becoming a country with a more democratic spirit.
So that's actually very good to know, and I hope that happens. But I want to end on a positive note and some thoughts from you on the policy. From the time of independence to now, we've actually come a long way, despite all the issues that we discussed, right? We are amongst the fastest growing economies now, in spite of the whole corona thing that we went through. We are the 5th largest economy, and it seems like we are doing a lot of right things in terms of policies as well. Sometimes backtracking on what could have been good policies like the farm laws and stuff. However, we've come a long way. What next from here? How do we get to the 2nd or the 3rd largest economy that Modi ji talks about? What are those areas that we will need to focus on, even if the voters don't care for it, but it needs to be done? How do you do that, and what would those things be?
See, basically, the thesis in my book is that democracy is good. Democracy is going to deliver. Now, what are the things that we need to do? I don't know, maybe I said that in the opening session also. We've resolved a problem. The problem is of getting those little ones to school. 100% enrollment almost. But we need to focus on quality of education. It's pathetic when I find that you have little boys and girls who are in class 5, they can't read a class 2 book fluently. Similarly, we have primary health centers which are supposed to resolve this problem. In my constituency or in my state, and it's true of most states, there are women who suffer from anemia. Now, there is no reason in 21st century when we are in the nuclear age and we have so many doctors and good, wise people, why our women should be suffering from anemia. We have boys and girls, little boys and girls who are underweight, who are stunted. There is no reason for that. So now comes the hardest part of it all. Now I am by spirit a reformer, so you'll never find me satisfied. No matter what you do, I'll say, aur karo. So maybe I'm being uncharitable that ensuring 100% enrollment was easy. It was not easy. But now what we have to do is harder to make sure there is no teacher absent. There is no teacher absenteeism. The boys and girls are learning. There is no little one who is going into class 5 without being able to read. There are primary health centers which are working. I'm not even worried about tertiary treatment. I keep telling that if I have cancer and I'm dying, the government shouldn't spend money on my treatment. If I can afford it, I'll get treatment. But let's not have our women die of anemia or children suffer from poor health. But we seem to be focusing on super specialty hospital. The government doesn't need to, and I know I may sound radical. They'll say you don't value you don't care for the value of life of a poor person. My answer is yes, I care for it, but I care more for those little ones who are going to be our future for the next 60 years than an old man or old lady who is dying of cancer.
Thank you, sir. We have 5 minutes, and I want to open it up for questions. Any 1 or 2 questions we'll take. Ramnik, sir. Yes.
First bench is not allowed to ask questions, is it? Okay, Ramnik. Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned that there is a lot of disdain for wealth in this country. We still, don't want to say we are wealthy. But at the same time, if you look at India and you look at the ratio between the wealth generators and the poor people in India, I don't know exact data, but I think it's about 50-60% people who still, live below poverty line. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have that data. Do you think this disdain is something which comes from inequality within the society, or do you think this disdain is the legacy of what we have been seeing from 1947 onwards?
We Indians, particularly your forefathers and my forefathers, they're used to seeing inequality. It'll be absolutely false to say that there's no inequality. The Maharajas and Nawabs and so on, look at their opulent palaces. I mean, the way they used to live, and just next to it, there were poor people who didn't have enough to eat. So that's a different thing. The Maharajas are different. The Nawabs are different. I'm talking about middle class, the middle rung. Now, inequality, what happens is, you must distinguish between 2 things. One is inequality and the other is poverty. My personal preference is to focus on poverty. I'm not a jealous man. If I find Raja Muni have become very rich, so be it. I'll wish him all the best. As long as I'm not poor. So to me, solving poverty is much more important than destroying inequality. And inequality, mind you, there are a few examples. For example, the South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, and which is the other country? South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan. See, East Asia, particularly the newly industrialized countries, they grew without much increase in the inequality. But in most of the other countries, including England or United Kingdom during the Industrial Revolution, see James Watt, for example, he must have become exceptionally rich after his discovery. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone else took the advantage. But the first mover always has a lot of wealth. Then it trickles down. So there is this time phase. I'm not very worried about anyone becoming very rich because I know it will trickle down. Ultimately, you have to spend your money. You will need workers. You will need even domestic help and so on. So I believe that this focus on inequality is slightly misplaced. I'll be happy if inequality is less, but I'll be more worried about poverty than about inequality.
So, sir, I was listening to you very carefully, and there was a reference of politics and economics. I believe what is good for economics is bad for politics, and what is good for politics is bad for economics. We've seen that example in Delhi, Punjab, and Himachal. And we know of Caracas, Venezuela, destroying, despite being a very large, largely, let's say, rich country with natural resources. My question to you, sir, is that how does a state which is either just exiting a turmoil or which is recovering from a turmoil create more opportunities for the youth? What policies would you suggest which would actually help the state industrialize again, encourage industries or businesses to come and set up again? And this is very specifically for Punjab. And for, like you rightly said, for West Bengal also. So what is it that the youth can look forward from their government in terms of policies to help them grow economically? Because I also feel a society which is economically or financially prosperous has lesser chance of getting radicalized and getting the other way, sir.
Now, I will strongly contradict your first statement that good economics is bad politics. In a way, you are right, but good economics may be bad politics for a short period. So it depends on whether you are a lamba daur ke ghora or you just want to be king for or chief minister for a few months. Look at the problems now. The problem is all of us, we want government should spend more, kharcha karo, spend more on education, spend more on health, spend more on roads, everything. At the same time, we'll say tax less, itna zyada tax le rahe ho. And then you will say, don't borrow, debt bahut बढ़ गया. So it's impossible to do all three. And that is what we have found in recent elections. Look at the three states. Maharashtra has just formed a government. In the three states of Karnataka, Telangana, and Himachal Pradesh, where they promised a lot. Now, Himachal is having serious problems. And also Karnataka and Telangana are not in very good shape. So you are right that good economics is bad politics, saying too much before the election. So I always tell my politician friends, अरे सच नहीं बोलना है कोई बात नहीं, झूठ मत बोलो. See, one is I'm lying. I'm promising something which I cannot deliver. The other thing is I'm not telling them what I'm going to do. There is a difference between the two. Now, this presumption that the voters are all fools, they will forget what you promised. And even if you don't deliver, koi problem nahi. I think the maturity of the Indian voter will make that impossible. So politics, I mean, you can have some compromises here and there. For in extenuating circumstances, you may have to give some handout to some particular groups. But if that's the backbone of your policy, that you will just promise things which you know is impossible to deliver, that's not good politics either. Because you may win one election, but you will be in trouble soon and you will not be sustained.
Sir, part two, sir, about the youth, what policies for states which are recovering from turmoil or which are, how do we industrialize and create more opportunities for youth?
So first thing, Ramneek, is not now. In the 18th century, our intellectual great-grandfather Adam Smith in his Wealth of Nations wrote, and it's true of Chanakya also and others, the primary responsibility of the government is law and order. If you do not have law and order, and if you do not have the security of property, then it's impossible to have industry. No industrialist, money is very shy. Money doesn't like uncertainty. I don't want to go to Punjab or some other state to invest if I don't know whether I'll be alive tomorrow or day after, or whether there'll be extortion, whether there'll be problems. So first thing that you need for industrialization is law and order. And that's true of some of the states in Northeast also. It's true of Chhattisgarh. It's true of many states. The second is, I think, infrastructure. Infrastructure is extremely important. See, West Bengal doesn't have a deep sea port. Punjab doesn't have a coast. But you need connections. And connections are not too bad. And then the quality of human resource. Punjab particularly, I haven't been to Punjab for a long time, maybe 5 years, 4 years. Drug problem seems to be quite, I mean, if all our bache are becoming drug addicts, that's a terrible situation. Not all. So, infrastructure, quality of education,
Law and order.
and law and order.
Thank you so much, sir. Very, very good answers, very insightful answers. I want to just close on two things. One, I want to appeal to everybody that the book, India's Search of Glory, is going to be an excellent read for anybody, any student who wants to understand the economic history and policy making in the country. And second, sir, you are such a refreshing contradiction from the image of Netaji that we have. Like, you are an elected MLA. You've been with us for 2 days here. It doesn't feel like, Arey, Netaji aa gaye, Netaji aa gaya. We could be just chill with you. You know what I mean, right? So thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, once again. Thank you.